What's good, everybody? My name's Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Shout out to Sugar Bites for sending me an NFR for Egoist, which is what we're going to be taking a look at today. This is a bunch of stuff in one, and it can do some really cool things. And here in a second, I'll show you why something like this is super useful to me. But it will help create loops for you. It'll help create glitches. It has a lot of intricate pieces and moving parts that we're going to go over. But before we do that, be sure to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and check out alchemy.com for all of my presets with neurobass and drums and whatnot. So this is significant to me because I've been making a bunch of my own loops for my own reason. We'll cover that here in a bit, but I love being able to take something like the iPad or my phone. Unfortunately, this is only on an iPad, to the pool outside or to the jacuzzi in the hot tub, and I've got my feet in, and I'm literally like making stuff like this on my iPad later to come in and throw my loops into the DAW to start creating music. And that alone is really fantastic. What an age we live in for technology. So this is a beat slicer. It also has like a weird bass line maker, which is actually more useful than you think on paper. Than on what it seems on paper. It's got built-in kits of drums and stuff, and as you can see, there's just a bunch of sequencers. There are 7 built-in effects that you can randomize, and really the whole basis of this thing is you throw a loop in here, it'll automatically find slices for you, and then you can randomize or play these slices in different ways. You'll see that there are these weird numbers over here at the top. This dictates what slice is going to play. We can randomize it all. Right here with this, you can dictate whether it goes forward or reverse. We can change the pitching via stuff here or the octave. This is the attack and decay. So if I were to move this up, you can see that we can add attack and then we can add decay here if we want to. I don't really mess with this a whole lot because I'm mostly concerned with making drums, but you can definitely throw, you know, any kind of chords or loops in here that you want to. Speaking of, all of this stuff is my own. Actually, they're just resamples of stuff that I've made within Egoist, but it's cool that, of course, you can save your own presets, but you can also upload your own stuff via using the import. You can go files, and then if you've got any drum loops or anything within here, you can upload that. Now, if that wasn't enough, because we have up to 16 different patterns, every single one of these patterns can be unique with their own loop, with their own effect settings, with their own timing settings. You can't change the global tempo, which you do that by going into this here. Everything's at 85 BPM, but through this you can have a bunch of different unique patterns that you can export as a whole in its entirety for more randomization or more variation, and I just love that. That's really cool. One thing that I have to say, I'm sorry, but I would love the ability to have some kind of nudge feature on here to where I can move stuff a little bit late or a little bit early. And I think that if you were to just maybe make this part a little bit smaller and add an offset, or have OF, not that kind of OF, but just OF, to where you can move the slider this way or this way per step, that would be awesome. Very easy to implement. I don't know if they're like going to update this at all or whatever, but just as a personal feature, I think that would be great. I love that you can find auto slices. So if you don't like whatever slices are in here, you just go random, you can change the sensitivity, whatever, and it'll automatically generate new slices for you. You can change the length, the envelope, the velocity randomization, which is really cool, and also the pitch if you want to. So with that, this is what this sounds like on the first pattern. It's nothing special, but now if I go to pattern 2, you'll see that we've got a different slice here and a different tempo change. So we can change that to maybe 16ths with a different amount of swing, like 50%. And let's see what that sounds like. Pretty wild. Now, I'm not going to go over all these features here, but basically they're just cut and paste functions or like moving functions if you want to kind of shift everything. And that's kind of universal between all of these. But all of this little box right here over on the right side pretty much works in the same way as you would of all of the sequencers that you have. And there's pretty much 3 or 4. So now that we have the slicer stuff, we can go into the effects, which I can hit random and play all of these at random, or just kind of type these in if I want to. And you can see that now I'm generating all different kinds of effects, and I love that I can stack these effects together if I wanted to. That's really cool. So now, because this is playing at random, the sequence has these different patterns on here, but they're going to be launching at unpredictable times. Now, it might be wise to go into some of this stuff, and I'm going to change the cutoff to low because I don't want this to go over, but I'm also going to reduce the amount of delay. I'm going to reduce the amount of chorus, and also change this to maybe like 1/8 or so. And that way I can control these global things here of how much I want to manipulate these effects as an entirety. And this basically just activates them as a whole. And you can also randomize these over on the left too if you want to, but I typically don't do that a whole lot. You have different types of filters here. Unfortunately, there's no notch, which is kind of odd, but whatever. It's not that big of a deal. You've got delays here, reverb, bit crushing, chorus, tape stop, and a looper, and they all work fine. And I think that they're all kind of conducive to rhythmic, and so if we were to kind of play this again, we might get a little bit of a different result. But even still, that's really cool that we have the ability to do that. Now, obviously, what we're playing here is getting kind of crazy and convoluted. So they've actually done something incredibly intuitive, which is they've added both a bassline maker and a beat maker. And this has up to 32 different kits. So you can pick a general kit and then change individual kit pieces from this if you wanted to. And if I go to generate, then this is actually going to pull up fundamentals of kicks and snares and stuff that could be used for, you know, refortifying whatever chaos we are developing. Now, one thing with this that I think is really important is that this does not have like a lot of control for these drums, but it's okay, because if we're thinking about using this outside of the box anyways, then this is only a means to serve as transient makers for whatever chaos we're developing. The same thing, if we're trying to develop some kind of tone, we can use the bassline maker, say put it in a minor scale, we can use it as a square wave, and just again hit some kind of random thing or whatever with some kind of different tonalities with this, and again kind of force it into a minor scale. Then that means that we've got a generic beat maker and bassline maker on top of our slicer here. And this becomes important because when you're trying to mix and match in between, which I'll be showing you how I use this here in the future in just a second, it becomes really powerful because you can do this on up to 16 different patterns, and then you can set again like a means of how do you want to trigger these patterns. Maybe I want to go 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 16 or whatever, but you pretty much can make a full performance out of this. I don't particularly use things for that, but when I bounce this out, having enough variety or sonic variety is what's going to be really helpful in me figuring out how to use more out of it or how to resample more. And if you use something like Drum Machine with this, also from Sugar Bytes, which I just reviewed, you throw that in as a loop, or you make a loop in this, you export it, then put it back in, like you're suddenly generating this huge library of content to use that is, well, really fun and inspiring. So if I were to kind of just do the same thing here, I'm not too worried about it. We can kind of just pick something at random here. Then now when I play these, you'll see that these will kind of bounce back and forth. Let me turn on the effects, and let's listen to what this sounds like in sequence. Awesome. So again, it sounds wild and crazy, but what's really cool is I can go into the bounce audio, and I'm going to hit plus, and I'm going to go into, sorry, let me scratch this out, and we're going to go into review and go save. Okay. Now we go share on that review. And this is what I love so much. So for one, we can save this to our files in case if we want to drop this back in, so we can save that in Ego. Yay, it works great. But now that we have this, we can go into our files here, and I can grab my samples and go into the Ego folder and go into the review, and let me go done, long hold, and go share, and airdrop this to myself. I love technology. This is so great. So moving on, let's say I were to move this in here. I've already got something prepared because I did this on stream earlier, so we'll just kind of shift over to Bitwig. But this was the original loop that I made in here. which, you know, doesn't sound like anything special, but what I've done is I've resampled it and changed this into a bunch of different moving parts, found different textures and pulled different things out through the power of resampling, and basically made a cool little beat that's kind of like this. There's a bunch of different pieces or different like beats that I've made out of this just for different auditioning different parts, but everything from that you're listening to except for the bass is from that same loop that we just played at the very beginning of this project. So if that's any kind of indication about like how useful this is to me and why things like Drum Computer and things like Drambo or anything that can be some kind of loop maker, you know, and this is just with drums. So imagine if I were to throw some kind of melody in here or something else of the sort, it becomes extremely useful. Actually, I made some chords from this from just doing some resampling that sound kind of like this. Nothing crazy, but you know, you can take you can make entire projects just out of a single loop if you have the wherewithal, and you can have a bunch of different parts that sound really cool. But by utilizing these loops and having a starting point to jump off from, it's incredibly useful for me to not only practice and flex my own sound design skills, but you can see here that I've got all these different parts that I've pulled out in order to kind of create this stuff. But you see what I'm saying? It's like, you can't, hold on, if you can not just look at these plugins, especially these effect plugins or these drum plugins at face value and look at what they can become, then you'll see a lot more value behind what it is that you're purchasing. And even though Sugar Bytes did send this to me, this was something that I was looking at anyways, and I ended up buying Drum Computer because I was like, oh man, I could make these really sick loops and start building different textures and timbres off of them, and also in like make these in a space to where I'm not stuck at the computer. And so like, even though I wouldn't say that I could go like fully iPad only, I will say that the amount of technology and the app variety that's on here is extremely useful to me. And yes, you can get the computer version of these if you really want to, but I really like the idea of taking my workspace somewhere else, working on some loops, and then coming back, throwing it into Bitwig, and then turning it into like, you know, a fully fleshed beat or something of the sort. So hopefully that gives you some insight into why I find these kinds of like weird iPad apps that I've been reviewing lately useful. But in the right hands, I think that there's a lot of power and a lot of possibility that doesn't change, or like it doesn't take or require rather you to like completely rethink your workflow. It's more of like, oh, you can do a couple of things and integrate it into what you're already doing in the DAW or on your computer or whatever workstation you like as a whole. So hopefully this was interesting to you all. Again, thanks to Sugar Bytes. If you all want to, you know, check out these presets that I have for different sounds that are kind of somewhat sort of maybe on the lines of making cool little riffs kind of like this, then I sell those at alckemy.com, and you can grab them via the ARCANUM series and also support the channel. So be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks everybody. Let me know what you all think about Egoist, and I will see you in the next one. Bye everybody.